You're listening to Systemic Era Podcast. The failure was designed.
Red states leading jobs thanks to Trump executive order, based on an article by Matthew Rarson. Trump didn't trim the state. He used it as a wrecking ball. The report, briefly. NBC News reports that Trump's government cuts have triggered more than 377,000 federal job losses, with especially steep reductions in states that voted for him in 2024 and in places with large rural populations. The cuts hit agencies like the Small Business Administration, USAID, Treasury, Interior, and Veterans Affairs, while DOGE under Elon Musk drove the restructuring after Trump's February 2025 executive order. The real decision-makers. This did not happen by accident, and it did not happen because government got too big in some abstract sense. Trump signed the executive order. Musk's DOGE executed the purge. That is the chain of power. Everyone else in the story is downstream from those two men deciding that federal capacity was expendable. The article's framing softens the blow by calling this cuts and reductions. But the actual political act is a deliberate teardown of state functions. When an administration strips agencies of staff and then refuses to explain the consequences, that is not management. It is governance by vandalism. The voters are the cover story. The most useful detail in the reporting is also the easiest place for pundits to hide. Yes, many of the losses landed in red states. Yes, rural communities were hit hard. But the fact that Trump harmed his own voters is not the scandal. The scandal is that he treated those voters as collateral damage in a project of power centralization and administrative sabotage. That he hurt his base angle invites a lazy moral. That bad policy becomes real only when it backfires electorally. That is too small. The more important point is that Trump used federal employment, federal services, and federal capacity as political objects to be broken. Rural people are not victims because they misjudged him. They are victims because he governs with contempt for the institutions they still depend on. DOGE is a mask for plunder. DOGE is presented as if it were a technical instrument for efficiency. It is not. It is a political weapon with a clean-sounding name. Under Musk, it became the vehicle for mass cuts that left the Small Business Administration down by 2,500 workers and USAID nearly hollowed out, with only about 200 employees left from nearly 3,300. That matters because the targets reveal intent. This was not a careful audit of duplicated paperwork. It was an assault on public capacity, including programs that deliver medicine abroad and revenue collection at home. The state was not being streamlined. It was being repurposed to serve a ruling clique that wants the benefits of power without the obligations of administration. Cruelty with no accounting. One of the ugliest details in the source is that DOGE has refused to provide an analysis of the impact of its cuts. That is the signature move of authoritarian bureaucratic destruction: produce harm, deny responsibility, and withhold the accounting that would let the public measure the damage. The laid-off workers are also being thrown into a weak labor market with specialized skills that do not transfer neatly into private sector jobs. That is not an unfortunate side effect. It is part of the mechanism. A government that fires expertise, then leaves former employees stranded, is telling every civil servant that loyalty buys nothing and professionalism is disposable. The pattern is the point. This story is not mainly about one administration's appetite for cuts. It is about what happens when elected power treats public administration as an enemy and then uses managerial language to disguise the wreckage. Trump and Musk did not discover inefficiency. They manufactured it, then called the wreckage reform. That is the larger pattern. Authoritarian politics often arrives dressed as cleanup, and plutocratic politics often hides behind the rhetoric of discipline. The result is the same. Institutions that ordinary people rely on get gutted, accountability gets buried, and the public is told to mistake deliberate destruction for hard-headed governance. You've been listening to Systemic Error. Thanks to AlterNet for today's article. With the automated voice of Razak, thanks for listening.